by default, you would have to interact with people every day. There's no shortcut. You would be talking to people, you would be pursuing people. It's the whole lot of educational element in there, convincing, making sure you have connections. So all of those should come as default. Move away from checkbox compliance and just think of it. It's like something you need to protect your organization. You don't do that just to pass an audit. You do it because you need to protect your infrastructure, your systems, your environment, your company.
Welcome to the Cybersec Migrant. This is the show where we navigate the intersection of global borders and digital frontiers. My name is Femi and I'm your host. Whether you've crossed oceans for a fresh start or you're currently navigating the 404 errors, if you will, of a career pivot into cybersecurity, this space is for you. So we're here to share ideas, share stories, the struggles and the real-world strategies of people who are securing the digital world while finding their own place in the physical one. I'm here based in Vancouver, Canada. And for those of you joining us on video today, it's great to have you here, especially if you're a returning subscriber. If you're listening to this on audio, thank you for allowing us to get into your ears. Either way, if you find value in these conversations, hit that subscribe button if you're on YouTube or give us a like on Spotify or Apple and leave us a review. Let me know. It's a small click for you, but it's how we grow this community and reach more folks who are finding their way in tech. Today, I've got a fantastic guest lined up. I'm sitting down with Shruti. Shruti is the Director, Governance, Risk and Compliance, Global Vision. Those of you who don't know too well, or you might have heard, Governance, Risk and Compliance stands for GRC, or it's what GRC means, if you've heard about GRC. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to put Shruti on that for in a minute here, but I want to let everyone who's listening know. You hear people say things like GRC is not technical. That is a myth, and that is a lie. GRC is very technical, just not in the way you think about it. But anyway, we'll get back to that in a bit. But right now, Shruti, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm glad to have you here. So again, for those who don't know, she is, like I said, she's based out in Canada as well. She's actually in the east of Canada. I'm in the west. But this month is Asian Heritage Month. And I thought, what better way to have somebody talk about their experience who is an Asian, an immigrant, and who is, for want of a better word, who's killing it, the GRC space. Shruti actually has this, is running on LinkedIn. It's called the 100 Days of GRC. So if you're not following her, look down in the comments below. I'm going to put a link to Shruti's LinkedIn in the description below. And you can follow all those comments on the 100 Days of GRC and let her know what you think about that. But Shruti, tell us a bit about yourself, a bit about your background. How did, because I know your background is in GRC. So But for the audience who doesn't know, how did GRC come about?
Sure. So let me start from the very beginning. I, 21-year-old, one day decided that she's going to pack her bags and move across 7 oceans and 12,000 kilometers approximately. I'm not sure what the miles are. And kind of,
We don't use miles.
yeah, it was a there you go. It was a big decision for a 20-year-old to kind of, for the first time it was literally for the first time getting out of my house and decided that I'm going to move across countries. Parents were definitely shocked and there was a lot of conversation. But hey, once it's decided, it's decided. So there I was in a completely different space, in a completely different culture with different food, let's say, because hey, we're gonna get to the food part later on, but
Yes, we will.
we are celebrating Asian Heritage Month, so food will come.
Definitely,
I guess
definitely.
so yeah, that's how my journey started in Canada. And I had a bachelor's degree in engineering, and I came here to do my master's degree in engineering. I am a Concordia alumni, super proud of it. Like while graduating, like I went through different courses, but after graduation, it was never about, okay, this is what I want, this is what I want. It was not very clear to me. I started as a business analyst, technical writer position, and I was introduced to the cybersecurity space right away. And that's how the journey began in cybersecurity, even though I was like a software engineering graduate. I was working with cybersecurity analysts, not like in that space. We were working on building products for them, which is essentially going to be used by the analysts in their SOC, etc. So I was exposed to that environment, and slowly, I got to absorb a lot of those perks, and I got to learn about the product. I got to learn about how things are used, etc.
Hmm.
That piqued my interest, and I slowly started to pivot. It was very clear to me from the very beginning that it's definitely not going to be, I was not looking for, a life as a coder or life as a developer. It was definitely a little bit on the other route. So that was very clear to me, but it was definitely not like,
Okay.
hey, I want to do cybersecurity or essentially GRC. But starting from
Okay.
there,
Okay.
a few different companies later, I was also exposed to compliance essentially,
Mm,
and Global
nice.
Vision
Nice.
was one of those journey starters for me. And then, I mean, I guess practice, knowledge, and I honestly get to use a lot of my engineering education and engineering experience in my day to day. And I appreciate the fact that you said that even though GRC is thought to be non-technical, it's clearly not. And there's a whole lot of element that gives me a super edge on understanding, communicating, and connecting with the product teams and the engineering teams and so many other different, understanding the risk factors of that, which I wouldn't have if I didn't have that degree. Of course you can learn
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
but it also gives you a little bit of an advantage. But
Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah. Yeah.
from there to here, it's been quite a journey. It's been different shifts. It's been a lot of learning, understanding, and kind of growing with it. There was quality, information security, data privacy, and now, of course, AI governance, everybody's favorite
Yeah.
topic. I'm also covering that in my 100 days of GRC as a preview. But of course, so yeah, here I am, and many days later, with many learnings later, still going on and still trying to learn and adopt as I go.
That's fantastic. And I completely agree. The industry is changing so rapidly that we as professionals have to do a lot to just sort of stay in lockstep, if you will. And I will come into the technical stuff a bit. I'll
Exactly.
come to that a bit later. But I want to actually go back and just talk about that journey of yours.
Hmm.
And I know the feeling. As a 20-year-old coming all the way to this country where you go from 40 degrees temperature to minus 20 degrees temperature. Like
Quite a
sometimes
shift.
you ask yourself, did I make the right decision? So when you first got here and then you started out in your career, yes, you came for school, but when school was done, you're like, okay, next steps. I'm no longer, mom or dad to ask and say, can you do this for me? It was all about you figuring it out on your own. So,
Yeah.
what did it look like for you to actually navigate that industry as an immigrant? Were there any unspoken, unwritten rules? Were there things that were perceived barriers? Did you break through those things? Because again, we'll mention this again for those who have not noticed you happen to be a woman of color, which
Yeah.
traditionally there has been a lot of barriers for people like that. So, what are those things that you actually had to go through on your journey as an immigrant, trying to actually get to where you are today? Share that story with us, and maybe we
Hmm.
can learn from that.
Of course. Yeah, so I would start as you started from the beginning. There definitely the weather, it's a factor. It's a factor. I was like, even though I was very much looking forward to snow, don't get me wrong, but after a while the snow starts to, you know, get to you.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it took a little bit of adjusting to that. There were other life skills that I definitely did not have and that I had to learn. The fact
Mm,
that my parents were not there, the family support were not there, that was a major factor too to kind of get through. Homesickness is a big deal as an immigrant that
yeah,
happens to
yeah,
the
yeah.
best of us. Sometimes it just feels too lonely. It's like you are missing out on that support. But on the cultural element, so as soon as, along with my studies, I was working as a research assistant. And this is where I
Mm,
got exposed a little bit to the working environment. So I was not just a student anymore. I was exposed to the team of researchers who were, some of them were masters, some of them were PhD, some of them postdoc, and some of them were industry experts. We were all working together. So little details like, introducing yourself, saying hi, how are you, and then having that small talk, that is something definitely not I was not used to it. From where, like in India, definitely we do small talk, but whenever you introduce yourself and say, hey, how are you doing? It's not necessarily that you want to know someone's life story. For that, I stumbled upon a little bit. I realized that this is just pleasantries. This is something they're
Yeah.
just trying
Yeah.
to be nice and opening up to you. They're not literally trying to ask you, hey, tell me about yourself or something. So that was one of the very first thing I learned, and that stuck with me. I definitely did not immediately possess the skill of small talk, so I had to learn that. And I think that is very necessary. Of course, there
Yeah.
will be people that you connect to and you remain friends and you know, you bond for life. But there would always be people who you would just connect for one engagement or two engagement, and you need to have that pleasantries done to connect to them and get the task in hand done. So there were little things like this. Also, dressing up and showing up like properly for the event that you're going to, making sure
Yeah.
you are presentable. That is also very important. Making sure you are networking. So I want to come back to that piece maybe a little bit later too. But I think networking is one of the most important things as an immigrant that you can do, because remember, all
Yeah.
of us,
Yeah.
we are here without a lot of, that circle when
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
we come here to a different country. So building your own circle with building your own network is so very much important. The reason I am here now, coming back to your initial topic, is like being a woman of color. It's definitely not very easy, but it's also not
Mm.
hard if you have, I think, two elements. One, if you
Okay.
have the courage to ask, and if you have the
True.
support
True.
that you need. So all I had to do
Mm.
is not be
Mm.
intimidated, to show up and to have the courage to ask. What do I have to lose? Best thing a person can say is no.
Is
And that is
no.
okay. I'm not letting that get
Yeah.
to me. I am
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
show up and ask. Ask to be part of a team in a project. Ask to be part of I don't know, a coffee with a person. Ask to be here in this podcast. All you could do is say, you know,
No.
a starting point. We need to show up and we need to ask those questions. And the next thing is building your network has tremendously helped me. It helped me get through situation. It helped me get connections. It helped me, like, I think knowing the right people has helped me get where I am today. It was never an easy journey, and it's never going to be. Nothing in life is easy. But if you have the courage to ask and to show up and the support of the right people, you will get through most of the difficult situations.
Yeah. That is so true. I think one of the biggest challenges for most of us as immigrants, because I went through this as well, just speaking up. Because particularly in some cultures, I know in the African culture, I think it's also the same thing in the Indian culture as
Same
well.
thing.
There's
Yeah.
something about
Yeah.
there's something about being the new person in the room, or being the younger person in the room, or when others are talking, you keep quiet and wait for your turn. It's not the same way in
Absolutely.
North America. If you don't speak, you don't get fed. Simple as that, right? So I think that that mindset shift from,
Yeah.
this is how we did it where I'm coming from, to this is how it's done in Canada, is a difficult thing for many, many immigrants. So on behalf of all your various mentees over the years, I want to say thank you, because you definitely show up a lot of work, a lot of community work you do, a lot of giving back that I'm aware of. If the other isn't aware, now they know your role as a leader. And one of the things that, again, the others may not know is that you're also a public speaker globally. Actually just came back from a conference where somewhere in Europe, doing some speaking there. And that was fun. But I wanted to ask, doing all of that, mentoring, speaking, giving back, has that influenced your own growth as a leader? Because again, sometimes I know it's hard where you want to do some of these things, and people think, why are you doing these things? But sometimes I think we do the things we do because it also helps us in our own growth. So how has that influenced
Of
your own
course.
growth individually as a leader, in particular in the GRC space where you are in today?
Of course. So it's I'll keep it very simple and easy. I learn from every conversation I have, and no
Mm,
matter who I'm
mm,
having with. One of the very important reason for me getting out there and talking to people and being part of these in like, conferences or even being a speaker is just to get exposed to the right community of people. You just
Yeah,
mentioned the
yeah,
European
yeah.
conference. One of the main reason of even like thinking about that conference is I wanted to be exposed to those group of people who I was expecting to be there. And it was not just about me talking about a particular topic or introducing that. It was about having the opportunity to be in a room with people who are coming from all over the world and sharing their experiences. I think for me, I learned so much more just by talking to them. And I met some of the very best people, very best minds who were on that space. And not all of them were just on the speaker podium. Absolutely
Mm,
not.
mm,
So many of the best conversations I had were after, actually, were outside of that space during those networking sessions. People came to me, they introduced me. I went to people, I introduced myself. Of course, being a speaker gives you a little bit of an extra advantage that they already saw you at the podium. So either they're coming to you or you going to them. It's easy to identify, and the conversation would generally start with, "Hey, that was a good presentation. How did you do this, this, this?" It's definitely a hook. But even regardless of that hook, I have been to so many conferences where I'm just attending as an attendee, and I have had some of the best conversation, and I stayed in touch with those people till date. And I've learned
yeah,
so
yeah.
much for them. I think majority of the fact, like one of the big, most important reason of doing this, getting yourself out there, whether it's for mentoring, for attending conference or speaking, it's to, again, that networking and learning from each other.
Mm,
Our
mhm,
GRC
mhm,
space
mhm.
is very, very, it's not still very well known. And, it's not as like, of course, GRC is part of cybersecurity, but it's not as popular as cybersecurity. So it was somehow a little bit of my motivation to go out there and talk about GRC itself and talk about the importance of some of the things and make it cool, if I can if I can say it, because somebody
That's
once
the
told me
word.
security is cool, GRC is not. But I think like now that I'm out there, I'm talking and I'm meeting people through all of these engagements, and people who are also so like open and honest about their path in GRC. I'm learning so much. So this has been fantastic.
I completely agree. Security is cool. GRC isn't very cool. That is so true. Hollywood is part of the reason why it's like that. You watch movies
Yeah,
like Ocean's 11 and all those movies where it's the guys who do all the
yeah,
hacking and all the firewall things that get all the cool stuff. And then when you tell people that, oh, frameworks, all right, policies, and like, that's not fun. But people don't
yeah.
realize that GRC is actually very people facing because, again, you're interfacing with the people, you're talking to the people, challenges you're having in terms of policy, because those conversations are the ones that shape, the policies we write. How do you assess the risk? So I
Hmm.
would rather talk to people than talk to a firewall. That's just me. So if you enjoy talking to firewalls, that by all means that's fine. But
Yeah, of
I
course.
think that people that people facing component of GRC, you can't find that anywhere else in that cyberspace, which
Hmm.
is why it's so cool, I think. And coming to
Yeah.
GRC again, because again, that's your forte. It's the reason it's been in the limelight recently is I think it's two things. One, there have been a lot of people who aren't in tech or cyber who want to get into cyber and who they say
Hmm.
go to GRC because it is not technical. That is not true
Hmm.
because it is technical. I mean, I tell people, have you picked up the any NIST document or any ISO document and read through it? You need to have a technical brain to understand those documents. So don't tell me it's
One.
not technical. So that's the first part. I think the second part is our friend, the elephant in the room that everybody's talking
Mm,
about now is AI. We have
of
to
course.
regulate AI. Otherwise, the terminals are going to come.
Yeah, of course.
What, looking at GRC and AI governance,
Hmm.
ISO 2001 and all of that, how do we need to adapt to ensure that we're not just allowing, willy-nilly, wild west use of AI, but there's good governance in place, there's good risk management in place, compliance is in place, not just for small
Mm-hmm.
businesses, but large enterprises as well. Because I tell people, if you're not using AI yet, all right, well,
Mm-hmm.
the last episode of the podcast, I'm going to put the card up here. I talked about how frontier AI is becoming a challenge. So it's something we need to think about.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say? GRC programs adapting to emerging threats like shadow AI or AI
Mm-hmm.
agents or open claw and the like? How do we deal with those?
Yeah, I'm gonna start with the very first question that you said. It's basically how do one get started with GRC, and that is one of the reason that they think about security and they're like GRC is the easier path. It's non-technical. Let's get started with that, and that is gaining some attention to GRC.
Mm-hmm.
For sure,
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of. So I was talking to someone who just graduated, and she's like, I want to pursue GRC, and I think I'm gonna do great. The first thing I asked her is, how are you with people? Because coming back to what you just said, a bigger element that nobody considers while dealing for GRC is going to be people.
People.
So the way I
Yeah.
think it's a half-half split. You have the technology and you have the people. I saw
Yeah.
somewhere a couple of days ago that people who are in audit or compliance are essentially being considered a lot more on the leadership roles than the technical
True.
folks.
True.
I
True.
don't know, I cannot vouch for the data, but I think when you have an analytical mind that comes with GRC, and when you're looking for that kind of, exposure, details, all of that, and when you're being like great with people too on that side, it is automatically become something that is going to
Yeah.
gather up to you becoming a leader, a more on a more higher like a VP or a C-suite scale that's already contributing towards that. So you will
Yep.
definitely
Yep.
have some sort of
Yep.
an advantage on that arena. But again, coming back to the main point, there's a whole lot of people element that a lot of us don't consider while choosing a career in GRC that we should absolutely, because you would by default, you would have to interact with people every day. There's no
Yeah.
shortcut.
Yeah.
You would be talking to
Yeah.
people, you would be pursuing people. It's the whole lot of educational element in there, convincing, making sure you have connections. So all of those should come as default. And of course, there's technology. How can there be not? As you said, the framework itself. Sometimes I've been looking at a lot of new posts where they're saying that, hey, just feed those framework into ChatGPT or like a tool or something, and that would do great. But
Really? I mean,
how would you
really?
understand what the output are? Because your job is not just, understanding this framework. Is of course making sure that what you are validating or auditing is also reflecting that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
technical essence in it, how are you figuring that out? And then I will come to the next level of. So AI has changed the game, and especially for GRC, and the
Yeah.
technical
Yeah.
aspects of the game has gone level up. One of the
Cool.
main
Cool.
topic of my speaking engagement in Denmark recently, I was talking about how you can use policy as a code. So basically, what I'm trying to say is like you take these frameworks or these policies that is dictated and you turn them into code, and then you
Mm.
put them in your actual code base to create guardrails, which would automatically, when you run your CI/CD pipeline, it would automatically detect some of the things that's not there
Yeah.
and would
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
let you push your code.
Okay.
So why am I even giving that example? It's like we are working, I mean, with AI, the automation part is just growing exponentially, and there is no
Exponentially.
automation
100%.
without your technical knowledge. So if you're
Yep.
someone who thinks that with GRC, I don't need any technical, I'll be fine, I think those days are long gone. With GRC, at
Yeah.
least a couple of years
Yeah.
ago, maybe,
Yeah.
but now with AI governance, you need to have that technical knowledge because automation and validating automation and validating AI or
Yeah.
auditing AI, you definitely need that. Without that, there is literally no path forward.
Completely agree. Completely agree. I was talking to someone recently, and part of the biggest challenges, particularly with automation, is those
Hmm.
things that you need to have in place to get automation to successfully work. So you need to understand the technicalities and how to actually implement that, whatever your pipeline is.
Yeah.
Right? And that also introduces its own risks because then with automation, you want to bring in identification and authentication. You manage that aspect of your automation. Are you going to give them a long live secret? Are you going to use, just in
Mm-hmm.
time authentication? How are you going to do all of that? You need the technical chops to be able to do that. So why anyone
100%.
thinks GRC is not technical again in this day and age still baffles me. But again, that's a soapbox I am going to continue to sit and stand on and say, don't say GRC is not technical. It is very technical. So now let's come
Yeah.
back to a bit about your experience, particularly again, you've been
Mm-hmm.
with Global Vision for quite a while now. And prior to that, you've got a lot of
Mm-hmm.
experience, around the governance and the risk. What do you find is the biggest challenge
Mm-hmm.
and the biggest success for particularly small and large organizations, global organizations, when they're undergoing their compliance transformation, and because every time they go on a compliance transformation, we're going to follow this policy. We're going to follow, we're going to follow ISO
Mm-hmm.
27001, or we're going to follow NIST CSF or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
what do you find is because personally, in my experience, I find that it's all good and dandy to have those documents, but actually
Mm-hmm.
implementing those documents in practice
Very,
is
very true.
usually a different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
find in your experience, and how do you bring that to play when how do you go from theoretical paperwork to practical implementation and application?
Yeah. So I'll start with the biggest positive point. I absolutely wholeheartedly believe it's leadership support. And I have a specific,
100%.
I have a video just on that topic, so I have to talk about that. But this is, I literally think that this is the one key thing. If you have that, you have won half of your battle. If you
Yeah,
have the
yeah,
right executive or leadership support to get that ISO, to get that compliance, and it doesn't have to be, because most of the time, compliance is thought of as a checkbox. And what I'm
yeah, yeah,
talking about is to move away from checkbox compliance and just think of it. It's like something you need to protect your organization. You don't do that just to pass an audit. You do it because you need to protect your infrastructure, your systems, your
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
environment, your company. You have a risk, you're taking care of that risk. That's why you have that compliance. Now, if you have the right executive support, it's the biggest positive point, but it is also the biggest challenge if you don't have that. If you have an
Yeah,
executive
yeah,
support, and if you have an executive who is constantly questioning and trying to cut corners and saying like, hey, I think you can just minimize this, I think this just needs to be this is this, keep it to minimum, don't give me a lot of things to do, don't send me a bunch of trainings, don't let me do this, keep the cost to
that doesn't help.
minimum. And then you have to justify every actions that you're doing, and you have to kind of
Yeah,
minimize your efforts. That's so very challenging and so very
yeah,
encouraging to get
yeah,
through. Remember, you're already fighting I won't okay, fight is a wrong word, but you're already trying to influence the entire company, because you
yeah,
already
yeah,
need to
yeah,
have them on
yeah.
your side. Not all of them are from the same background or do not even speak the compliance language or even understand the reasons behind what you're doing. So if you have an executive who's constantly challenging you, on top of that, that could be one of the worst things that could happen to you.
I can imagine. I can only imagine. And that is so true. Executive and leadership buy-in is one of the biggest things. And I think it's not just in cyber only, but it's across, whatever department you are in,
Everywhere.
either in marketing or sales.
Yeah.
If you're trying to get through a policy, a project, and implementation, and you don't have leadership buy-in, it's really going to be hard. So the leadership
One of
is crucial. To have leadership helps it move smoothly. But then again, the leaders can't do it all alone. So we need to bring in a new generation of GRC professionals, newcomers, immigrants, because the leaders are going to go on and sort of age out or retire or whatever it is, or stay for 40 years. I don't know. But we need new
Mhm.
generation of, professionals to come in. What would be your advice? Someone to say, hey, Shruti, today I'm thinking of GRC. what would you advise me? What would you say if someone said, "Be my mentor"? Because I'm sure you get those requests on LinkedIn all the time. Can you mentor me? If
Yeah.
I was asking you for mentorship as a GRC professional, what would you say? What would your advice be?
Generally start by asking what I asked. I gave an example. What I asked before is like, why do you want to do that? And then essentially follow up with like, why do you think this you are fit for this career? I want to understand what's motivating you to go into this
Mm,
career, but I also want to understand why do you think you are best suited for this career? Because
yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
it starts by I need to find a job, and then whatever you get started. It
yeah, yeah.
shouldn't be. I mean, I am all acknowledged about the market and everything that's happening around the world, and I'm absolutely respectful of that. But you should also understand that once you pick a lane, after a certain point, there is no experiment. This is what you have to
Exactly.
do for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is
true.
your
Mhm.
continuation. So try and pick something that you actually enjoy, not something just haze you. So to the next generation, that is what my general question to understand if this is actually something that they enjoy today, interacting with people, interacting with documentations, and also a little bit of technical blend. I understand who they are and then I give them the advice. And it's not always like a single linear path, like, hey, go ahead, read a bunch of docs and kind of chat GPT things. No, it comes with experience, it comes with learning, it comes with GRC, you definitely don't need like a straight set of degrees to get started. You can learn a lot on the job and grow yourself. But the basic thing is about having that curiosity and having that growth mindset is very, very important because the regulations are changing, the risk landscape is changing. It is one constant thing that's changing. So every time that changes, your job shifts. I started from
Yeah,
quality, then security got added, then privacy got added, now AI governance got added. It's never static. So one
yeah, yeah.
thing I already have is that curiosity and that mindset of growth. That's my advice.
That's perfect. I can't give any better advice than that. I think I always tell people there is no cookie cutter way to doing it. Don't assume that you're always going to do the same thing
There's no
over and over and
shortcut.
over again. With GRC, every day is different. Today you're dealing with agentic AI, tomorrow you're dealing with frontier AI, the day after that you're dealing with quantum issues,
Quantum is
risks.
coming.
There's so many different things that we have to deal with. So we've got to constantly learn, constantly be on our toes. So, but like you rightly said, I tell people whatever you're going to do, because you're going to be in a career for 35, 40 years,
Hmm.
you better make sure you love what you do. Otherwise, you're going to go to work
Exactly.
every morning angry and sad. And we don't want that, right?
You
We don't
don't want
want
to
that.
become one of those memes. And
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
so exactly. So you have to
Yep.
make sure that you are definitely liking what you're doing.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. And speaking of liking what you do, generally, cyber folks and GRC folks, and I blame the auditors for this, have a reputation of being no fun people, that we don't have fun. And I know that is not true. So tell my audience, and let us know
Hmm.
so that they know that we actually have fun. What do you do for fun? What's your idea of fun when you relax and not think about GRC? What do you do for fun?
Oh, I love watching a lot of like I'm a television buff, so every time there's a new movie,
Ooh.
I have to watch it. Every time there is a new TV show, I have
Have
to
to or
watch
you
it.
need to.
I need to. I need to. As soon as the episode drops, I'm like, oh my God, the new
Yeah.
episode of Boys drop. I have to go and watch it.
Mm,
So that is just something like that's one of the things I do. But me and my husband, we love to travel. So we try to at least
nice.
go to 2 to 3 countries a year. That's the goal for now. I don't know how long we will be able to continue that. But I feel like no matter exactly, the cost definitely adds up. But the amount of things I've learned from travel, it's beyond like
Yeah.
nothing has taught me in life what travel has taught me. It has humbled
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
It has showed me patience. It had showed me how different perspectives can be, how different cultures can impact you. Like Yeah, so I think that is something I would definitely continue, even not the pace that we have today,
Yeah.
but at least on a long term. And other than that, we are like, I'm a little bit non-outdoorsy. I try to like do things inside the house, but also I get dragged outside the house because I have a husband who is very outdoorsy. I'm doing a balancing act, but yeah, that's
Okay.
pretty much, I would definitely say like, yeah, I've met a lot of cybersecurity people who are definitely out there and who are like, I'm not even compared to any fun compared to them, but it is
Mm.
definitely a myth that cyber or GRC folks are not fun. Like, have you
Yeah.
been to any cyber conferences? They're super fun.
Exactly.
They're
Exactly.
super
We are
fun
so
with
fun.
all the
We're so fun.
networking
And I
and
agree.
everything else. Yeah.
Exactly. And we have that in common as well too. I also love to travel, every year I'm doing, a trip. Last year, no, it wasn't last year, 2 years ago, I did a tour of Europe. I did like 5 or 6 different countries in Europe over a month. That was
Wow.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was pricey, but it was fun and I enjoyed doing that. I did the travel. The other thing I love to do is I love food. Food is
Me
a
too.
big, big part of my life. I call myself a certified foodie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, being an African and you being an Indian, we know about food very well. Food is what makes our
How,
cultures our
how
cultures.
good can it get?
Somebody once told me something and said, you know how the Westerner would say, you can't please everyone, you're not vanilla ice cream. She said, you can't
Mm.
please everyone, you're not butter chicken. And I laughed.
No, no, no.
Favorite
That
meal.
can totally do that. Yeah.
Favorite meal. What's your favorite meal? If anyone were to ask you, what's the one meal you can't say no to at any time, even at midnight?
Oh, I love a good biryani. You should ask my
Okay.
husband how many different restaurants I order biryani from. Cook like whenever I am in the mood, I cook biryani. I'm ordering different biryani. I yet have to find the perfect one, but that's the favorite one. That's one
Mm,
favorite food. Doesn't matter it's
okay.
midnight or early morning. I can have biryani. I'm a big rice fan, so anything that has to do with white rice. The part of India I'm from, we are very rice heavy. So I grew up eating a lot of rice. So biryani, a good biryani.
That's good.
That's it.
That's good. Where I come from in Nigeria as well too, rice is a big staple. We don't only wait till Christmas to eat rice. We eat rice every time. Different flavors of rice: white
Same.
rice, jollof rice, coconut
Exactly.
rice, fried rice. It's just rice is life, right?
Rice is life.
um,
Exactly. And it's
yes.
very hard to lose weight and stay fit when you eat rice all the time.
But I know people who eat rice and they don't gain an iota of weight. I want to know their secret. So I'm probably going
Oh
to
my
ask
God,
one
me
of them
too.
and say, what's your secret
Me
to
too. Tell me what's
eating
the
rice
milk.
without getting fat?
Yeah, that's
But
the next book.
the next one, yes. The next one is how to eat all the things you want without getting fat. That's my next mission. But it's been such a very,
Absolutely.
very fun conversation today, Shruti. I've had so much fun talking to you about this. It's been exciting. And I think the audience definitely
Me too.
would agree with me that yes, there's a lot more to RC than being non-technical. So hopefully that's something we've been able to actually, to change and let people realize that so much more to cyber than saying you're not technical. So any last words, any final words? Last
I'll start with the last word. So what I was trying to say is I'll go back to the two things that I said a minute before, and I want to stress upon that. If you Because this podcast is about a journey of an immigrant into cybersecurity. I think the two things you need to have once you begin your journey is the power to speak up. You
yeah,
are in a space where it's appreciated when you speak up. It's not looked
yeah,
down upon
yeah,
or it's not
yeah, yeah.
discouraged. So make sure you're getting out there and you're asking the question. It will be right sometimes, it won't be right. It doesn't matter. You're still asking. And also have some patience. In life, it's very, very important to have that patience. And that's what like I have felt with my own life. It's not always, everybody is on their own journey, everybody is on their own path, so it might not happen to you immediately. Just don't think that you have to compare yourself with someone else and think they're achieving this at this. It's not your journey, it's not your path.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
stay
yeah,
curious, ask those questions, but also have the patience and go through your own journey. And I wish
yeah.
everybody a great luck and success.
That's so fantastic. I couldn't have put it any better myself. On behalf of the audience, I want to say thank you, Shruti, for coming on. It's been such an insightful conversation, and I've learned a few things. I'm sure the audience has learned a lot as well. If it's okay, like I said earlier, I'm going to put a link down to Shruti's profile in the description below. So feel free to connect on LinkedIn. Like I said, she has this 100 Days of GRC series going on LinkedIn right now. Super useful, super helpful. Check it out. You could probably learn a lot from that. And said on behalf of the audience, I want to say thank you, Shruti, for coming on. And if you've listened to us this far, thank you for listening to another episode on the podcast. If you're coming on, check out the other episodes on the podcast as well. You can also check out the second podcast, which is the CSM Lounge, where I interview people who are not necessarily cyber, but more tech stuff. And we talk about a variety of things, 3 episodes on there. So check that out as well. And until the next time, this is Femi signing out.